Hey guys, it's Russell back with DieselGiant.com, and on today's video I'm going to show you how to remove your vacuum pump and your power steering pump assembly from your Dodge Ram diesel. We're going to be resealing the critical seals that are in the vacuum pump. It's a very common leak that these trucks have. When they start getting around 150,000 miles or over, you may notice that you have an oil leak that is originating from the vacuum power steering pump area, and you may not know where it's coming from. There's a couple seals in there that over time will start to fail, and you'll notice you'll be getting some oil residue on the steering pitman arm and up around the frame rail, things like that. And depending on how bad it is, it may leave a spot overnight when you park. It's not a hard job to do. It's a little messy, but I'm going to show you how to do the job and get it done correctly. So let's go out to the truck and I'll show you what we need to do to get this job started.
Alright, so I'm actually working on two videos. I'm working on the radiator removal video, and I noticed that my oil leak was coming from the vacuum pump and power steering pump assembly. So I wanted to go ahead and leave this off because it's easier for the camera to get in here. Let me go underneath and show you. You see all this oil everywhere? See it? That's all coming from the junction right in there, where the power steering pump and the vacuum pump mate. Alright, so there is a tappet cover that's on the side of the block. Thankfully that's not leaking, because above where the bracket is dry. Now this is a little bit of a pain to take off, just because it's tight. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to empty the power steering reservoir. I'm going to do that with an evacuator. And then I will take the pressure line loose right there. And there are two other hoses, the return hoses, that I'll show you from up top. Those will have to be disconnected. And there's an oil line. The oil line is about right there. That feeds the vacuum pump. That's the lubrication for the vacuum pump. So I'm going to try to take off the minimum of what I need to take off. I'm definitely going to have to remove the intercooler tube. There are two, I apologize, I don't know how this is going to come out on camera. There are two hoses. The sun is about blinding me. That's right over there. They just have some clamps hooked onto them, and those are the return hoses. And there's a big vacuum hose right here. My finger's at. That's got to be removed. And then there are two bolts that hold the. We're going to take the entire assembly out as a unit. I'm not going to disconnect the pump in the truck. Take the whole thing out because it'll be much easier to reassemble it. There are two bolts, one here and one on the opposite side, that hold the pump assembly to the back of the timing case. And I'm going to probably have to loosen this harness here. Just enough, just give me a little bit of room. I've already loosened the positive battery cable, and I'm probably going to have to loosen the negative one, maybe, or maybe not. But anyway, so it's buried down in there. It's a little bit of a pain to get to, and the problem with shooting this is I'm shooting into the sun. So I can't tell on the screen, my little LCD screen on the camera, how this is going to come out, but that's the general steps. So first thing, I'm going to evacuate the power steering fluid from the pump. Then I'm going to disconnect the three lines and remove my intercooler boot and pipe here. I'm probably going to have to remove this connector here, right here. This whole assembly is going to have to come out this way. So let me get at it and I'll show you what's going on. Alright, so what I've done so far is I've removed the air intake horn and removed the tube to the intercooler. So I have a lot more room to work here. Now right here, you're going to have to remove the nut to the clamp that holds this harness on right here. That's a 15 millimeter. Okay, and then that drops out of the way. So I don't think we'll have to do anything else with this other than remove that clamp. Now there's another, this is a double nutted stud. There's another nut right here that holds the pump to the vacuum pump. So I'm going to put that nut back on. Alright, now this guy right here, I'm probably going to need to loosen him. And then I'm going to go ahead and take my evacuator and remove the fluid that's in here. And then I'm going to remove the pressure line here. And then these two lines right here are the return lines. Got my evacuator. I'm just going to pump that up and we'll see the fluid being extracted. If you don't have this, you can use a turkey baster if you don't ever want to use it for food again, or as an alternative you can just let the lines loose and put a catch pan underneath there. That's a little more messy. Alright, so you're going to run into this if your truck has any age on it. I've removed the clamps, but I cannot get the hose off. It's basically fused on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a razor blade and just slice the end just about an inch, which will be enough to allow me to peel the hose off. I'm going to do that on both sides here. So this truck is 15 years old and these are the original hoses. So now what I'm going to do is take a screwdriver and just peel it back a little bit and then the hose will slip off. Alright, so both hoses are off. I had to cut a slit as I said before and had to do that. These are very, very hard now just from heat and pressure. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the high pressure hose right there. And then we'll start to remove the pump. There's one bracket we have to take off, and I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. Okay, I pulled the power steering pressure line out of the way. It's an 18 millimeter fitting. So we've got the harness loosened from, there's a little nut that was right here, and then I went ahead and loosened it from the front cover here. So now there's one bracket that we need to undo on the back, and I'll show you where that is now. Alright, so you see we've got everything disconnected except for one bracket. It's right there. Right there. So we're just going to loosen it from the block, and then we will take our 2 bolts loose and remove the assembly. I forgot to mention one thing. The oil feed line here uses a 15mm wrench to remove it. You want to do that before you remove the pump. Alright, the last step is going to be remove the nut. This is a 15mm. There's one here, and there's one 180 degrees opposite of this on the bottom. Alright, so I've got the bottom bolt completely out, and I'm removing the top one here. And then all you have to do is slide the pump back, and it'll come out just like that. Now we'll see if I have enough room to get this out. Yep, here we go. It's a bit of a tight squeeze, but you shouldn't have to move anything else. And you see how much easier it is when you have the radiator removed. I'll show you guys the pump. Let me get the camera set up. Alright, there's the pump, and you can see all the oil right here. This is where the seal in here leaks after about 150,000 miles or so. Is what you should get out of it. The pump is, it's fairly heavy. Just notice that I left the bracket on there. We're going to clean all this up, but I wanted to show you guys what the other side looks like. Okay, now let me show you what the case cover looks like when the pump's not on there. Alright, so there's a lot of room in there without that cover on there. Now, one thing that is interesting to note is that the gasket that is supposed to be at the cover to the pump is not there. I don't know why. It's supposed to have a aluminum gasket there, but it's not there. So I will clean all this up before I put the pump back on, but let's get to the main thing and start rebuilding the pump. Alright, because this bracket has to be at a specific angle to fit on the truck, I went and scribed a line here and right here on the pump housing itself so that I can get it in its relative position. So I'm just going to take a 15mm wrench and remove all the nuts that hold the pump. As you're looking, again, this is the side that we're normally looking at. It just separates just like that. Now here you've got the 2 tangs, and I'll show you the inside of this pump here. I'm going to clean this up just a little bit. Alright, so inside the pump is the corresponding drive, if you want to call it a star. You can see the residue here. The camera can pick it up where it's been leaking. This thing's been leaking for quite a while. Okay, so we're going to separate the 2 halves of the vacuum pump. There are 2 bolts holding this. They're both 13mm. Pull the pump apart. So one of the things that we'll be replacing is this O-ring right here. This is the vane of the pump. These pieces slide out, and that's how it creates a vacuum. And these are the drive ears. And then on this side we've got the star gear in there, and just going to clean that up. Now what we're going to do is we're going to be removing this seal retainer here. This is the shiny piece that's right here. It fits down in there, and inside that is the seal itself. We're going to be replacing that also. What you want to do is make sure to note the depth that this sits down in here. Okay, so if you want to mark it, I'm going to just take a caliper and measure right here so I can get it the right distance. But you want to make sure that that distance when we reinstall this seal retainer into this housing is the same that it is now. Alright, so I've got a cheap pair of calipers here, and I'm just going to do that, and then it measures 9.5 millimeters. If you also want to, after you clean this area, you can scribe a line on here as a quick reference, or put a Sharpie mark or something like that. Just make sure that after you clean it, you don't accidentally get rid of your mark. I'm going to go ahead and clean this, and then also put a Sharpie mark there. Alright, so I've got a block of wood here, and we're going to be driving this retainer out this way. So because this is uneven and doesn't sit flat and you don't want to break these, I'm going to take the 2 bolts that I took to separate the halves and put them under there, so I've got a nice flat stable base. Okay, now you can use a socket to do this part if you want. This is a bearing driver that I've got, and the size of this is 15, looks like 15/16. So you could use a 1-inch socket if you wanted to. So I'm going to just drive this out. Okay, just like that. Now, on this piece right here, you will notice a dimple. I don't know if the camera can see that, but that dimple faces this way. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean out this housing very, very well. In fact, I'm going to get some brake cleaner, clean it out, make sure it's perfectly dry. And then what I'll be doing is I'll be putting this back in first. You do not want to forget this piece right here.